The Joe Rogan Experience.
Well, they also don't want to lose the respect of their friends who are also subscribing to that same ideology.
Yeah, yeah.
That's a big part of it, man.
Team politics.
Well, over here in California, if you're not left wing, if you don't, just instantaneously when there's an issue, instantaneously side with the left, you get chastised and you get called a racist, or you get called a Nazi, or you get called a Trump supporter, or you can't even have a rational perspective on things. You can't say something like, in hindsight, it was a good idea that Donald Trump closed off travel from China because it was coming from there, and a lot of people were calling him racist. It turned out to be a good move, and then they've shut it down from a lot of different places as well. You can't say that.
So yeah, right. So the first thing Trump does is the task force. 2 days later, the travel ban. Joe Biden says the last thing we need is Trump's xenophobia. Then on March, I think 12th, Trump suspends travel from Europe. Joe Biden says a travel ban won't stop this. April 3rd, Biden says, actually, Trump was right about that. Now Joe Biden's launching ads saying Trump didn't go far enough. Now Nancy Pelosi is saying Trump should have banned Americans from coming back in.
Did you ever see that video where Nancy Pelosi is talking about telling people to go to Chinatown in February?
Of course.
That video is fucking insane. And when they confront her on it, on Fox News, I think it was Chris Wallace on Fox News was talking to her about it. She's saying, well, the record will show that I was saying don't be rude to Chinese people.
Now, you were down there encouraging it.
Yes.
And
the record will show. She's such an ineffective speaker. It's so bizarre that she got to a position of power because she's so disingenuous and so fake in the way she communicates, especially on those shows.
Maybe she's just old. Maybe she was better before. I don't know.
Maybe, right? That's the Biden question.
Oh, man. Yeah, the Biden question. That dude's he's not even here anymore.
It's so weird. It's so weird that they're pretending that it's okay, that this is going to be fine.
But the way they're defending him over these allegations is the creepiest thing ever.
Or ignoring the allegations entirely.
You see Alyssa Milano? When she came, what is this?
Yeah, she said he deserves due process. But what about all the other times? What about all the other people?
This is it. It's I can't predict what's going to happen. There's a lot of things that are changing, right now that's going to affect whether or not Trump wins, the Republicans win or lose.
But what about this weird thing that he wants to do where he wants to insist on a woman of color as a vice presidential Biden wants to?
I think he said, I'm not sure if he said woman of color. I think he said he's guaranteeing it's going to be a woman, and he's looking at a woman of color. I'm not entirely sure. To me, that's absurd. I mean, if you've got a good candidate, I think, I don't care what they look like, what their skin color is, their race, gender. I know a lot of people on the left view that as like short-sighted because, and I think there's decent reasons to talk about how identity plays, into how you view the world and the policies you want to implement. I just think it's dangerous to create that kind of.
We're not talking about prom queen. We're talking about someone who actually has a real important job. You shouldn't pick them based on what part of the world their ancestors are from or what gender they are. That's ridiculous.
I would actually say on a scale of 1 to 100, that's not near like the top 50. But I think it is fair to say that there's a real reason why that would play a role. Like you've got a lot of people who have never experienced certain things, and that includes the left. And one of the big problems we have in politics is what we see coming from the left is really based on urban living, and from conservatives on more likely to be rural living. So when you see people on the left argue for like rent strikes and things like that, well, yeah, you're in cities where you're predominantly renters, so that's your big issue. It doesn't resonate the same with people who live in areas where they primarily own their homes. Or if you're talking about the Second Amendment, like obviously people in cities, they tend to be liberal, they want gun control, because you've got a very, very dense population, gun accidents probably are an issue, and you've got cops within a minute's notice. You live in a rural area, the cops are 40 minutes away, you need to protect yourself. So this divide creates a difficulty in creating policy for the entirety of the country.
That's a good point.
I personally would never place someone's like racial identity or gender in the top priorities, but I do think it is fair to point out that a black woman is going to understand things about life in the black community that a white man's not going to. That doesn't mean you give him a job because of it. You can point out the perspectives will be different.
I agree with both those things.
Right.
But that's a good point, too, in terms of the overall country is so enormous and it's so different and varied. Like to find some common ground amongst everyone is so incredibly difficult.
So it's a contest of who's got the bigger bucket, the bigger electoral bucket.
Yeah,
you know?
that's a good way of putting it too.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like, but either way, there's so many people that are just going to vote left to get Trump out of office. They don't care. They're going to elect a guy with dementia.
You got to pull up this article. Stay alive, Joe Biden, by The Atlantic.
No.
I'm not kidding.
When did they put this in?
Oh, man, it was a couple weeks ago, maybe. It's called Stay Alive, Joe Biden. And then she says something like, all we need is your corporeal form. And it's amazing.
God,
no, you're going to love
so
it. You're gonna love
crazy.
it. It's not only arguing that we just need Joe Biden's body, but it actually kind of argues he's a bad candidate. And it's like, it doesn't matter, though. It doesn't, because we just don't like Trump.
Well, they're right about that. He's a bad candidate.
Biden?
Yeah. They could have done so much better with Buttigieg, with Klobuchar.
Seriously.
They're terrified of Tulsi Gabbard. And they're terrified of Bernie Sanders. And Andrew Yang, I think, probably freaks him out a little bit, too.
I'm a big fan of Tulsi, and followed by Yang. And a lot of people didn't like that because, I rag on Democrats all the time. It's like I'll fully admit it. You can criticize me all day and night. I very much see Pelosi and Schiff, Nadler, and the problems we have with them. And I'm not a fan of their policies. I think they go they either do nothing. But within that, I saw Andrew Yang and his website. The list of things he's gone through, what he's thought about was insane. I mean, the dude had a policy for everything.
Well, he's a brilliant guy.
Absolutely.
And he's also not a politician. So his approach is going to be from a guy who's an entrepreneur.
Right.
A guy who looks at it in terms of problems to fix.
You can argue there's a similar thing there with Trump being a businessman, but Yang's list, he's a comprehensive list of policy positions was to me, I was like, I like it, I do. Tulsi,
he's not that guy. The thing about Trump is a giant personality,
right?
Whereas Yang is a really reasonable person.
Yeah. For me, Tulsi's anti-war stance was paramount. I think the U.S. has wasted too much money. We've got people arguing for, fix the pipes in Flint. And I'm like, right on. Let's stop building weapons and doing deployments and trying to control these foreign countries and start working within America. And I think that there's a reason why a lot of moderates and conservatives like Tulsi, and it's that it's kind of America first, right?
Yeah.
Why are we applying so much of our resources and time and energy to these foreign countries? We shouldn't be doing that.
Well, also, she's earned that perspective with 2 tours of duty overseas. She served in the armed forces. She's been a congresswoman for 6 years. She understands a lot about how this works.
I disagree with her on some of her domestic policy issues, nuclear energy, and
what is her stance on nuclear energy?
She opposes it. Well, I don't
it.
want to speak for her because I'm trying to be very careful, but negative view on nuclear energy.
Nuclear energy is different than 3 Mile Island,
right,
or Fukushima. We need to understand that when you're looking at some of these issues that they have with Fukushima in particular, which is a kind of an antiquated system that they had set up that they can't really shut off, which I had a whole bit about how crazy that is.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the nuclear power that they could implement today, it would be a very different system.
Right.
That would be fairly clean.
Extremely high return on energy investment.
Yes.
And 0 emissions.
Yes.
But there's a fear because of the past.
Just put it somewhere that sucks. Just put it somewhere that sucks. Put a big one somewhere that sucks and juice up the whole country with it.